Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are undertaking a truly massive exploration. We're moving beyond the usual headlines about what AI can do.
Yeah, we're focusing squarely on the human side of things.
Exactly. We've been wading through a formidable stack of source material, all centered on what might be the toughest challenge for any organization right now.
Which is, how do you actually build a credible, healthy, and maybe most importantly, a genuinely human-centered AI culture?
Right. And it's a huge task.
It is. And that's the mission here. Because this isn't really about adoption, is it? It's about operationalizing trust.
Operationalizing trust. I like that.
Yeah, we're digging into these really comprehensive, actionable strategies that, frankly, require us to be brutally honest
About what?
about the psychological, the social, and the structural constraints that, dictate how people actually react to these tools. If you try to just enforce usage without dealing with those human constraints first,
The whole thing just falls apart.
it's guaranteed to fail. And often it fails silently, which is the worst part.
Absolutely. And the documents we've reviewed, they really provide a kind of architectural plan. It shifts the whole focus from, tool tutorials to people management. It's about creating an internal ecosystem where you're actively managing fear, you're dismantling skepticism, and you're trying to minimize that cognitive overload everyone feels.
And we're going to unpack how to define and use these new, really crucial human roles.
The ambassadors, the curators, event planners.
Exactly. All designed to be the sort of human bridges in this whole technical transition.
It's like AI is the engine, but what you're saying is that trust is the fuel.
That's a perfect way to put it. If the culture doesn't protect those fundamental human needs, things like judgment, agency, dignity, that engine is just going to sputter out. It doesn't matter how powerful the tech is.
So our job is to show you, the listener, how to design a system where caution isn't just accepted.
But it's actively validated. It's seen as a good thing.
Okay, let's unpack this. And as the sources wisely suggest, let's start with the hard truths.
Yeah, we have to.
We have to understand why people resist AI in the first place, and it seems to come down to this one sort of unavoidable tension.
Exactly. You just can't bypass this initial psychological hurdle. The sources, they frame this whole challenge as a fundamental core tension that really governs the entire culture around AI.
And if you ignore it,
You're missing the plot completely.
which is the clash between what they call the institutional desire and the human need.
Precisely. On one side, you have that institutional desire. It's all driven by measurable metrics.
Speed, scale, efficiency.
Optimization, all that stuff. It's the language of the board, the quarterly report.
Right.
But every single human employee operates under what they call the human need. And that's the requirement for, meaning, agency, fairness, and just dignity in their daily work.
And it sounds like the conflict really ignites the moment AI appears to be a zero-sum game.
Yes. When it prioritizes those institutional metrics at the expense of human value.
That's when AI becomes controversial.
Or even toxic. When the tool promises to double output, but then it offers zero guarantees about job security or skill relevance, it's sending a signal.
And that signal is...
It's signaling to the workforce that the institution values speed over the very people who deliver the quality.
So the sources are really clear on this. The first step to building a positive AI culture is not by promoting the benefits.
No, it's by honestly naming the fears and the risks that come with these trade-offs. You have to put that human need first, even if it means slowing down that initial adoption.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so let's stop talking about abstract fears and get into the specifics. We've got a detailed analysis here of the core constraints that fuel resistance.
Let's do it.
Let's start with the most personal, psychological, and emotional constraints. This is what the sources call the human layer of resistance.
And this layer is so challenging because the resistance here is emotional. It's not logical. The first constraint is just this overwhelming fear of replacement. And for most employees, AI isn't just a symbol of, being less efficient. It's a deep threat to their self-worth.
And the sources really emphasize that this fear exists even when technically replacement isn't even realistic.
Oh, absolutely.
You might tell a data analyst, look, this tool will only handle the routine queries. It's going to free you up for strategy. But what are they actually hearing?
They are hearing, the routine part of my job, the part I spent 5 years mastering, is now worthless. The fear of losing relevance, losing income, or losing the identity that's tied to their craft. It's profound.
So people are evaluating AI through the lens of What, self-preservation?
Exactly. Not through the spreadsheet of efficiency.
Mm.
And if you don't validate that fear, that analyst is going to subtly sabotage the tool.
How so?
Maybe by constantly pointing out its minor errors or finding reasons not to use it. They're doing it simply to preserve their own sense of self-worth. And honestly, it's a completely rational defensive maneuver.
That psychological defense mechanism leads us right into the next constraint, which is the status and skill threat.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember reading this section being fascinated that the resistance isn't always coming from, the operational level. It's often from the highly skilled employees.
The subject matter experts.
Yes. Why is that?
Well, because AI is a massive skill gap compressor.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so if you are a 10-year veteran in corporate finance, right?
Yeah.
You've built your whole career on complex proprietary modeling, and then suddenly a large language model can produce a 90% accurate draft of that model in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
That expert is existentially threatened. They are asking themselves, if AI can do this, what was the value of my decade of mastery? What was my professional status worth?
So it completely destabilizes the established professional hierarchy. Their whole investment in mastery is just cheapened.
Exactly. The more years someone has invested in their domain mastery, the greater the potential resistance, because their entire value proposition, their unique, hard-to-replicate skill, is fundamentally threatened.
So how do you overcome that?
The cultural narrative has to shift. It has to move from AI replacing skill to AI demanding better judgment and editorial skill. You have to respect the investment they made, not diminish it.
And then there's the third constraint, which seems like it might be the most difficult to address with just logic.
It is. It's moral contamination anxiety.
Moral contamination anxiety.
Yeah, it's a really powerful, non-technical barrier. It's not a technical critique. It's an intuitive, moral repulsion. A lot of people oppose AI because it just feels soulless or cheating or inauthentic.
So it triggers a kind of disgust response.
A deeply rooted moral disgust response, yes. You see it a lot with creative professionals or people who really pride themselves on their thoroughness.
So if a salesperson uses AI to draft a proposal, even if that proposal is technically excellent, the salesperson themselves might feel this deep internal discomfort.
Precisely. A sense of having cheated the client or diminished the value of their own authentic effort.
Wow.
They worry that a document created by AI, even if it's correct, it just lacks the necessary soul or intellectual effort, and that makes it feel morally wrong to submit.
And you can't reason someone out of that feeling with a slightly better prompt template.
You absolutely cannot. You have to address that moral boundary. You have to define when human effort is non-negotiable, like when the time spent actually shows respect to the client. Only by validating that moral standard can you even begin to shift the conversation.
Okay, so now that we've addressed those highly personal constraints, let's widen the aperture a bit to the social layer.
Right. The trust and legitimacy constraints. This is about how teams interact with the technology.
And the first major hurdle here is opacity.
Opacity equals suspicion. It's the classic black box problem, just writ large. AI systems give you these highly confident outputs, a decision, a forecast, a recommended action.
But they offer little to no visible reasoning.
Or a clear citation trail. The system just can't be reliably interrogated.
I see the difference. If a human manager makes a controversial decision, you can at least ask why.
Exactly. And they might say, well, because sales were down 10% in that region and our competitor just launched a new product. You might not agree with the decision.
But the reasoning is visible. You can follow the logic.
Exactly. But when an AI decision engine just spits out, the best move is X, without showing you the weighted factors or the underlying data, trust just collapses. Immediately.
Because if I can't look inside the box, I assume something is wrong.
You assume something nefarious or at least incompetent is happening, even if the result is correct 9 times out of 10. The sources are so clear on this. Trust requires transparency, and AI inherently resists that transparency.
That invisibility makes the next constraint, inconsistent outputs, far more damaging.
It really does.
Humans are surprisingly forgiving of human inconsistency. We assume someone's tired, or having a bad day, or there's some context we're missing. But a machine is different.
We hold machines to this impossible standard of flawless, predictable logic. So one visible failure from an AI, a major hallucination, an outright factual error, a really obvious bias.
It can wipe out months of good work.
It can completely negate months of quiet, efficient success.
It's the catastrophic failure that resets the trust meter.
Yeah.
Not the quiet, incremental success that builds it up.
Yes. The human mind is wired to focus on anomalies for self-protection. So when the machine is brilliant one moment and then wildly wrong the next, it violates our core expectations of how a machine should behave.
And the distrust that creates.
It's highly resistant to logic, it disproportionately outweighs all the perceived benefits, and it ensures that this permanent sense check burden is placed on every single user forever.
And finally, this inherent skepticism is amplified by what the sources are calling historical baggage. People aren't just evaluating the AI tool in front of them, they're evaluating it through the lens of, what, institutional trauma.
This is such a crucial point for any leader to understand. AI inherits the sins of past failed corporate initiatives.
Like what?
We're talking about past automation drives that led directly to layoffs, or those so-called productivity tools that were revealed to be disguised employee surveillance.
Or those huge, expensive software implementations that promised efficiency but just bogged everyone down in bad user interfaces.
Exactly. So when a new AI initiative is announced, employees aren't hearing, "We have a wonderful new tool for you."
They're hearing, this is the next iteration of cost-cutting and potential job insecurity.
Precisely. They are reacting based on those past abuses, not the present, possibly benevolent intent of the new system. And that history has to be actively acknowledged and disarmed. You can't just ignore it.
Because if you don't address that historical trauma, people will just assume the worst-case scenario.
They will assume that the speed and efficiency gains are entirely extractive and that it's all coming at their expense.
Okay, so if we zoom out again, the organizational and structural constraints make those social and psychological ones even harder to manage.
They all compound each other.
Let's look at the realities of the institutional structure itself.
Okay, let's start with a really systemic issue. Misaligned incentives.
What does that mean in this context?
When leadership frames AI adoption primarily as cost reduction or as a way to scale output, employees immediately hear one thing.
My time is less valuable.
Exactly. Which means that even if the tool genuinely makes their job easier, the way it's communicated ensures that the whole adoption process sounds threatening or extractive.
It creates friction where none should even exist.
It does. And if the incentive structure rewards the fastest output, then the employees who take the time to critically verify the AI output or who opt out because of complexity, they get penalized.
So adoption feels forced.
It feels forced because the guardrails that ensure job security and protect deliberation, they haven't been clearly established or funded.
We also have the structural reality that the culture always lags way behind the technology.
Oh, always.
Creating friction points like attribution and credit in this new hybrid human-AI creation process.
This is a key ethical and, frankly, operational constraint for any knowledge worker. If an AI drafts the initial structure and a human refines it, who authored the work?
Who gets the credit?
And critically, who is held responsible for the mistakes? Is it the human who edited it or the system that drafted it?
And the sources point out that if these questions are unresolved, they create massive friction.
Especially for roles where intellectual output is their primary value. It's a huge problem.
And then on the technical front, the sources highlight two core realities that often get swept under the rug in all the hype. First, AI is not reliable judgment.
This is maybe the most crucial realization for any organization. AI systems are phenomenal prediction and pattern matching engines.
Right.
They are terrible at assessing real-world consequences, understanding nuanced human context, or operating free of their own training data bias.
So the constraint here is that AI requires supervision, not delegation.
Yes.
Over-trusting the system is perhaps the most dangerous failure mode of all.
Absolutely. The human must remain the ultimate authority on consequence, on context, on ethical alignment. The moment an employee stops reviewing AI output with a critical, skeptical eye, the moment they delegate judgment, the entire organization takes on massive risk.
So we need to be building skeptical super users, not trusting ones.
That's a great way to say it.
And finally, a constraint that really impacts everyone: the sheer complexity of managing all these new systems. It leads to tool sprawl and cognitive load.
Every new AI tool, no matter how helpful it is in isolation, it fragments our workflows, it creates learning fatigue, that feeling of, oh, just one more thing I have to manage.
Right.
You can imagine a user needing one LLM for generating code, another one for internal policy search, and a third for drafting client-facing summaries. That constant mental switching.
The context shifting, the burden of deciding which tool for which task.
It dramatically reduces the perceived value of any single one of those tools. And if you overload the system's cognitive capacity, people will just shut down. They'll revert to their old, comfortable analog methods, even if they're less efficient.
So the organizational ROI of the tool is killed by the administrative burden it imposes.
Exactly.
Wow. That is a staggering list of obstacles. We've covered profound human fears, social suspicion, organizational friction. But now that we understand the constraints, let's look at the solution framework provided in the source material.
Let's do it.
Which is all about building trust through proximity, specifically by establishing the AI ambassador role.
This is where we pivot. We're moving from identifying problems to designing human solutions. And the strategy here is really fundamental.
Okay.
You're not trying to convert people using mass communication. You're trying to lower friction and reduce fear by using recognizable, trusted colleagues.
Which is why they have this golden rule for skeptical audiences.
Yes.
And that rule is never lead with AI, lead with the audience's pain.
Exactly. When you introduce a new tool, skeptics are not thinking about the technology. They're thinking about their own well-being. They're silently asking themselves these questions.
Will this make my job harder?
Will this be used against me in my performance review?
Is this even worth the cognitive effort to learn it?
Right. And if the ambassador starts by touting the GPT-4 API or discussing the latest token window, they've already lost the audience.
Completely lost them.
AI tips are totally irrelevant until those fundamental fears are disarmed and a genuine, painful workflow problem has been identified.
So the ambassador is the person who comes in and says, what?
I know you hate filling out expense reports. Here is a 5-minute trick that cuts that time in half. That is how you build trust. That's how you earn the right to talk about the technology later.
Okay, so let's look at the formats that actually work for reaching those skeptical or, fence-sitting audiences. The sources have a fascinating ranking of effectiveness.
And the formats, they have to reflect that low commitment, low risk approach of the golden rule. So the #1 winner, by a significant margin, is the 5-minute context-specific demo.
Why is this the gold standard?
Well, for a few reasons. First, low time commitment. It respects their attention. It's just 5 minutes. It's easy to risk.
Right.
Second, it feels honest because it's usually a live demo. It's accountable to the person presenting. And the rule for these sessions has to be strictly followed. Focus on one task, one outcome, 1 minute saved.
You are selling immediate, tangible relief.
That's all you're selling.
Can you get us a detailed example of what a successful 5-minute demo would look like?
Absolutely. You don't demo the whole LLM interface. You demo something like this.
Yep.
Here is how I use this specific AI feature to turn a messy 15-email back-and-forth thread with a difficult vendor into a clean 5-bullet summary ready to forward to my manager.
That is relatable tedium. That solves a specific common frustration.
Exactly. And crucially, these demos should be optional opt-in segments held inside existing weekly team meetings. So it doesn't feel like some mandatory, time-consuming mandate from on high. It's an invitation, not a requirement.
Okay, moving down the list. The second most effective approach is the department-specific office hours.
The success here is all in the framing. You have to frame these sessions as workflow help or time savers, definitely not AI training.
Why not?
Because that framing creates a psychologically safe one-on-one space. When the conversation is private, people feel comfortable asking the dumb questions they would never ask in a public setting.
Questions like, is it okay if I use this to quickly draft an email to my spouse?
Or, I kind of feel like I'm cheating if I use this. Where is the line?
So the value is less about the technical advice and more about the psychological safety and that personal connection.
Precisely. This is where ambassadors build trust on a micro level, one individual conversation at a time. And that trust is far more durable and valuable than any mass broadcast of success stories.
And the third format, the dedicated Teams channel or Slack group, this one is listed with a major warning label attached.
It fails spectacularly if it's launched too early.
Before trust is established.
Exactly. If you launch it on day 1, it just becomes an echo chamber for the 3 most enthusiastic users, and everyone else just mutes the channel. It increases their cognitive load and their resentment.
So it only works after people have seen AI help someone they know.
And after the policies are clear.
So what's the rule for success in that channel once it's actually established?
Strict quality control. No hype posts. Only short, specific, non-spam examples of utility. A good post is something like, just used AI to rephrase a tense email about the budget so it stayed factual and non-confrontational. Saved me 15 minutes of agonizing. Here's the prompt.
And a bad post is?
AI is revolutionizing the paradigm of content creation. That just adds noise and accelerates the mute decision.
So the ambassador's job then is really about being a trusted source of truth and a permission giver, especially when they're dealing with the core anxieties of skeptics. Let's model how an ambassador would address these fundamental questions. Start with the most urgent one. Is this going to replace my job?
Right. And what the skeptic is really asking is, am I safe here?
Okay.
So the ambassador has to be empowered and trained to be honest, but also precise. You have to avoid making these vague promises about future employment numbers that you can't keep.
So the effective answer emphasizes augmentation, not automation.
Right. You state. The goal is to change the tasks you do, not remove the human. We need you to spend less time on tedious task X and more time on critical thinking Y.
And crucially, they have to name what AI cannot do.
Yes, AI cannot be accountable. It cannot provide emotional context. It cannot exercise final judgment on client delivery. When you clearly define the limits, you define the non-negotiable value of the human being. And that is a key part of preserving their dignity and addressing that fear of replacement.
Okay, next fear, the bureaucratic one. Am I allowed to use this?
And the hidden meaning there is, will this use get me in trouble later?
Right. Uncertainty is adoption killer number one. The ambassador must be able to pull up a clear policy document defining what's explicitly allowed.
Like summarizing public documents?
What's strictly prohibited.
Like inputting confidential client data?
And, critically, what gray areas are protected for experimentation. If an employee tries something new and it fails, they have to be protected from disciplinary action as long as they followed the basic safety guidelines.
And that fear of getting in trouble is connected to the fear of surveillance. Will my work be monitored?
And this needs a direct, unambiguous answer. Is usage logged? Yes, probably, for safety and cost management. Is the output reviewed by managers? Not necessarily, but it could be.
Is it evaluative in terms of performance reviews?
If the answer is no, we only track usage for cost allocation, then you say that clearly. The sources stress that even bad news, like, yes, we log usage, is far better than ambiguity. Ambiguity breeds paranoia, and it drives usage into the shadows, which actually increases risk.
Transparency is non-negotiable here.
It has to be. Okay, then we tackle the fear of looking bad. What if it gives me wrong information and I forward it?
Yeah, they're worried about looking negligent or stupid. The ambassador has to frame the relationship as one of shared responsibility. AI drafts, humans decide.
The expectation needs to be clear.
The expectation must be that the human is the editor, the verifier, and the ultimate decision maker. This is the difference between being a delegator and being a collaborator. When you emphasize the need for human verification, you validate their professional judgment.
And finally, addressing that deep-seated moral contamination anxiety. Isn't this just cheating? Isn't it lazy?
And what they're asking is, does this devalue real work? The ambassador's role is to reframe AI as a drafting tool, a way to get the tedious first 80% done faster, not a final authority.
So you show examples where AI supports the craft.
Yes, like perfecting the tone in a difficult memo or creating 10 versions of a headline so the human can pick the best one, rather than replacing the core analytical thinking. It's about maximizing impact, not minimizing effort.
So if we summarize the ambassador role, they are clearly not evangelists or super users.
Not all.
They are translators, listeners, boundary holders, and essential permission givers.
And their credibility comes from their consistent use of this simple playbook. 1. Acknowledge the deep-seated hesitation. I know this feels weird. 2. Share a relatable low-stakes use case. 3. Show the quick before and after, focusing on time saved. 4. Name the limits and cautions, but remember you have to verify every number. And 5. Make it absolutely optional and consequence-free.
And that methodical sequence builds trust far more effectively than enthusiasm ever could.
Ever.
That transition is smooth. Now that we understand the constraints and the ambassadors who manage proximity and trust one-on-one, let's transition to the next key role, the event planner. This role is crucial for designing broader, repeatable learning experiences. And the goal isn't just to teach AI fluency.
No, it's to design moments where curiosity feels safe and useful and relevant to that human need we talked about.
So we need to move beyond standard dry training.
We really do. The event planner has to design events that appeal to relief and practical utility, not ideological hype. So the top-ranked event aligns perfectly with that golden rule we discussed.
It's the show me something that saves time session.
Yes. That's the universal currency in the workplace. People will show up for relief. They will not show up for a philosophical discussion on the future of work.
Right.
So these should be hyper-focused and short, no more than 20 to 30 minutes. They have to focus on one real workflow and offer a clear, measurable before and after comparison. And the examples need to be mundane, relatable frustrations.
So instead of a session titled Exploring the Frontiers of Large Language Models, the event planner should title it something like Cutting Through Inbox Clutter. Get 30 minutes back today.
Perfect. Other successful examples are things like turning meeting chaos, pages of notes, into a 5-bullet summary ready for a follow-up email.
Oh, that's a good one.
Or drafting a response to a difficult, emotionally charged email without escalating the tone. That saves them from potential interpersonal fallout. The focus is always on immediate personal benefit, which respects the cognitive load of the learner.
The second type of event is the skill-building workshop. But the sources insist this needs to be completely reframed to succeed.
Absolutely. You have to avoid titles that sound too technical or centered on fleeting technology, like Advanced Prompt Engineering 101.
Because that just sounds like homework.
It sounds like homework, and it only targets the people who are already converted.
So how should the event planner reframe it?
They should use titles that appeal to professional pride and transferable skills. Things like asking better questions with or without AI, or reviewing AI output like an editor.
Oh, that's smart.
It immediately communicates that the skill being taught, critical thinking, clarity, editorial judgment, is valuable even if the AI tool vanishes tomorrow.
It preserves the perceived value of the human skill. It validates their intelligence by saying, we're not teaching you to type faster, we're teaching you to think better.
It connects AI to their existing professional identity. You're teaching better communication, better editing, better clarity. The focus stays on the human cognitive function, not just technical fluency with some vendor's interface.
And finally, the event's designed specifically to center the skeptic's concerns, the ethics, risk, and boundaries panels.
These events are so powerful precisely because they validate caution. They signal organizational maturity.
So the event planner shouldn't call them compliance panels.
Definitely not. They should use titles that acknowledge the real human anxiety. Things like, when AI should not be used, protecting confidentiality and craft, or where human judgment still matters, the non-negotiables.
And by centering the skeptic's concerns, you actually encourage the skeptics to attend.
Yes, you turn them from external resistors into internal participants in the boundary-setting process.
It brings their moral contamination anxiety out into the open.
And allows for a structured, non-judgmental discussion. This disarms that silent resistance that is so toxic to a positive culture.
The sources provide this powerful heuristic for event planners, designing events for mixed audiences.
They do.
Every event has to clearly answer one of the audience's core psychological questions, or attendance will just collapse.
This is a great check against novelty and hype. If the audience is asking, will this help me? Your event has to be a time-saving demo. It has to offer immediate relief.
Right.
If they're asking, will this hurt me? Am I at risk of misstep or surveillance? Then it requires an ethics and boundaries panel to show the guardrails.
And if they're worried about looking foolish, asking, will this make me look bad? They need a safe use workshop that focuses on verification and editing skills.
And if they're asking, is this worth learning for the long term, then you need a transferable skills workshop. You have to demonstrate that the time investment today will pay off regardless of technological turn.
This heuristic ensures the event planner is designing based on human needs, not just showcasing technical features.
Exactly.
Before we move on to the curators, let's address a point that really contradicts the popular media portrayals of AI users.
Right.
What does a person who is using AI, interestingly, actually look like? The sources firmly counter this image of the prompt wizard or the tool collector.
Yeah. The key finding is that the most interesting and effective AI users are, first and foremost, just good professionals. They already have a strong grasp of their domain and their workflow.
So they aren't defined by their mastery of the AI tool. They're defined by their mastery of their job.
Yes. They use AI not to replace thinking, but to remove friction. The annoying, tedious parts of their job that just drain energy.
They see AI as a highly efficient secretary.
That can handle the initial low-stakes drafting, and crucially, they know when to ignore AI completely. They're the ones who talk openly about its limits, who are comfortable saying, that prompt just didn't work for me.
So they prioritize outcomes over novelty.
They prioritize getting the client a better result over trying the latest feature.
They seem to possess this necessary combination of curiosity paired with a profound self-protective skepticism.
That is the magic formula. They're defined by their strong editing and judgment skills. They realize the greatest value AI provides is forcing them to articulate their criteria and their judgment up front.
They're the people who will actually make the culture healthy.
Because they model discernment, not blind enthusiasm.
That brings us to our third essential human role, the resource curator. Now that information is flowing, we need to manage the torrent of new tools and articles and policy updates without creating noise and adding unbearable cognitive load.
The curator is the organization's sense maker and filter. They have to operate as a librarian, not a broadcaster. Their mission is not to answer the question, what exists in the world of AI?
But rather the highly focused question.
What is worth your attention right now, given your specific role and constraints?
So a good curator, therefore, saves attention, which is a far more precious commodity than time in today's information environment.
Absolutely. If a curator shares everything, they share nothing. Their primary role is the conservation of human attention.
So how does a curator accomplish this sense-making role without being overwhelmed themselves? The sources suggest using AI for AI-assisted curation.
Yes, the tool should help the human filter. The best process involves using AI to summarize long external articles into these highly structured human-framed points. So every resource has to be summarized into 3 sections: why it matters, who this is for, example, marketers, HR staff, legal team, and critically, when not to use this or be cautious.
And that third point, naming the caution, that's what builds the trust, right?
It is the rule. No resource enters the knowledge base without that essential human framing. If the curator is always talking about limits and caution, they build credibility. If they only share glowing success stories, they just sound like propaganda and the filter fails.
Okay, moving to the structure of the knowledge base itself, the retrieval layer. How do we ensure this curated knowledge is actually found and used and doesn't just become a forgotten digital file cabinet?
You have to strictly avoid chronological dumps, or these flat folders organized by technology. The Knowledge Hub has to be structured by user intent or problem, not by technology.
So instead of a folder titled Latest Updates to GPT-4, we organize it around human challenges.
Precisely. Categories should be problem-centric. I need to write or explain something difficult. I need to analyze a large document quickly, or I'm unsure if AI is appropriate here. Where are the guardrails?
That way, when a lawyer is anxious about confidentiality, they immediately find the relevant policy document, not a list of software providers.
Right.
The sources suggest using a lightweight searchable structure like a searchable wiki as the primary home.
Yes. It needs short entries, clear last reviewed dates, because the stuff moves so fast, and a highly visible, consistent tone that says, this is optional, this is help.
Long, dense pages will kill adoption instantly.
Instantly. It has to be searchable using plain, non-jargon language.
And to draw people in, the sources recommend a tool of the week or idea of the week as a format of curation as invitation.
This is a really powerful pull strategy. It keeps the knowledge base active without spamming the organization. But the format has to be highly disciplined.
What are the rules?
1 item only, 3 to 5 sentences max, a clear who this is for, and most importantly, explicit permission to ignore.
Permission to ignore. That seems so counterintuitive if you're trying to drive adoption.
It is crucial. For example, idea of the week, a simple AI trick to summarize messy inboxes. Useful if you deal with more than 50 emails a day. If you don't manage a messy inbox, feel free to ignore this. It won't help you.
That permission respects their time and their cognitive load.
It signals that the curator understands their constraints, which increases the likelihood that they will pay attention when something is relevant to them.
Let's talk about engagement. How do curators foster engagement without creating organizational spam and resentment?
They need to make the curation conversational. They have to invite dissent. If the curator shares a useful resource, they should explicitly invite feedback like, we shared this, but let us know if it didn't work for you, or what are the limits you discovered?
Which fundamentally signals this isn't propaganda, this is shared learning.
Exactly. And instead of constantly resharing the same articles, they should rotate context, not content.
What does that mean?
So if you shared a policy document 3 months ago, don't just reshare it. Instead, reframe it. We're revisiting the confidentiality policy because the marketing team just asked about using AI for a new product launch. This is the specific clause you need to focus on, and here is a new failure case we observed.
That rewards people who already saw the content by giving them new insight without forcing them to reread old material.
Exactly.
Curator's role is clearly about quality control. What is the crucial question they must answer before sharing anything?
They have to answer. Would I recommend this to a skeptical colleague? If the content is pure hype or requires excessive cognitive load or sounds like a sales pitch, the answer is no, and it gets filtered out.
The curator is the final human filter, protecting the organization from information overload and unnecessary experimentation.
That's their job.
We've established the constraints and the necessary human roles: ambassadors, planners, curators. Now we move into the final operational phase, putting it all together into an actionable, humane implementation plan.
Right.
Let's look at the practical 12-month implementation timeline, which is paced at human speed.
In this timeline, it assumes that AI adoption is a controversial psychological shift, not just a neutral technical rollout. So phase 1, month 02, is entirely focused on foundation and trust.
So the goal is psychological safety above all else. What are the concrete actions there?
The absolute priority is defining permissions. So actionable items include defining what is explicitly allowed, what is discouraged, like, low-stakes experimentation, and what is strictly prohibited.
Like client data input.
Exactly. Next, you have to publish a short, plain language AI principles document, preferably a single page, focusing on responsibility and judgment.
And what's the key statement leadership has to make?
They must explicitly state AI use is optional and non-use is respected, and most critically, protected experimentation within the guardrails will not be punished.
And if this foundation is rushed or skipped?
Every subsequent phase will be built on fear, which guarantees resistance.
Okay, moving to phase 2, months 3 to 5. Early wins and visibility.
The focus here shifts from policy to utility, and the goal is to feel quietly helpful, not exciting.
Okay.
This is when ambassadors run those small 5-minute demos in existing team meetings, showcasing one task saved. Curators begin their small, annotated sharing of highly specific role-relevant information.
And you're looking for what, a few real success stories?
3 to 5 real, quiet success stories from different departments, demonstrating relief, not hype.
Then we hit the critical inflection point.
Yeah.
Phase 3, months 6 to 9, skill building and normalization.
This is the transition from novelty to habit, at least for those who opted in. We run the reframed workshops focused on transferable skills like better editing or ethical verification.
And this is also when ambassadors help teams define when not to use AI.
Yes. They establish clear boundaries where human deliberation is non-negotiable. The culture starts defining its own non-AI space.
Then finally, phase 4, months 10, 12, integration and reflection. This phase isn't about scaling up, it's about honest evaluation.
Yes, and the actionable item here is not to survey usage metrics. You must survey trust, comfort, and clarity.
So you ask employees questions like, do you know the boundaries?
Do you feel safe asking questions? Has AI reduced or increased your stress?
And you use that feedback to identify honestly where AI helped and, just as importantly, where it failed.
And then you must publicly sunset the tools and practices that didn't stick. You have to show the organization that the process is iterative and that leadership is actually listening.
We've established the core roles, but the source material suggests 2 crucial additional roles for achieving organizational maturity and managing complexity long-term.
The first is the AI governance ethics steward. This role is essential because it's the designated owner of the guardrails.
So they answer the critical question, should we do this? Not just can we?
Exactly. This steward handles the edge cases, ensures ethical alignment with the company's stated principles, and protects both staff and leadership from the inevitable ethical missteps that are going to arise.
And the second is the workflow analyst problem scout.
This role prevents what we call solutionism, that tendency to apply a powerful, shiny new tool to every problem, regardless of whether it fits.
So the problem scout identifies the real, measurable pain points in a workflow before matching them to a tool.
Right. They might discover that the actual problem isn't a lack of efficiency, but poor communication between teams. Applying AI there would just add noise. This scout ensures AI is applied where it genuinely provides relief, not just where it's technologically possible.
We have to look beyond the official plan and acknowledge the shadow dynamics. These quiet second-order risks that can derail even the best-laid cultural plans. These are the things that happen when no one is watching.
And the first reality is the shadow use reality. People are already using AI privately, often in breach of future policies, because the tools are so easy to get.
And the risk is that if the official messaging is too restrictive or judgmental or slow,
those employees just go further underground. And this increases the organizational risk dramatically because the behavior is now invisible and unguided.
So how does leadership manage the fact that the behavior is already happening?
The messaging has to normalize and protect the behavior, not just seek to correct it. Leadership has to acknowledge that experimentation is natural and frame the policies as protective. We have these guidelines to protect you and your data, rather than punitive. You have to bring the shadow use into the light, even if it makes you uncomfortable.
Then there's the good student trap.
This is an internal status risk. AI adoption can quickly become a status performance.
So the employees who adopt the jargon tout their use and look progressive.
They may be unconsciously punishing colleagues who express caution or resistance. And this creates a new toxic hierarchy where discernment is punished and enthusiasm is rewarded, even if the enthusiastic employee is using the tool really poorly.
How do you counteract that kind of status competition?
You have to publicly model non-use as acceptable. Leadership and ambassadors should celebrate discernment and caution, not just enthusiasm. Highlight cases where a high-performing team intentionally decided not to use AI for a critical project because human deliberation and care were required.
You celebrate the boundaries, not the adoption metrics.
Exactly.
Another critical tension that AI exacerbates is the speed versus care tension.
Oh, yeah. AI is designed to reward speed, fluency, and rapid iteration. But so many high-value domains, legal review, client care, strategic planning, they require intentional care, deep deliberation, and emotional intelligence.
So the risk here is this quiet, unnoticed erosion of quality standards.
And a moral discomfort that people can't even articulate, that feeling that something just feels off about this output.
So the action item is cultural. Explicitly names slow work as valuable.
Yes. And define tasks where AI should be intentionally absent. Define the sanctuary zones where slowness is a badge of honor, not a sign of inefficiency.
And we also have to recognize the overwhelming cognitive load ceiling.
Even helpful AI adds meta work. Should I use it? Which tool? How do I verify the output? Who owns the decision if it fails?
And this can lead to burnout from meta work. And just one more thing to think about, fatigue.
The solution is highly counterintuitive, but it's necessary. You have to teach people when not to consider AI at all to reduce decision fatigue.
So you offer explicit defaults.
Yes. For example, for this category of high-stakes client communication, the default is human-only drafting. Don't even open the AI tool. You have to reduce choice and create cognitive shortcuts to save people's mental energy.
Speaking of communication, the sources highlight that the subtle language drift matters more than you think.
Language is such a powerful signal of intent. Words like leverage, optimize, and scale often trigger that extraction anxiety we talked about. They remind people of past layoff cycles.
So if leadership constantly uses this jargon, it signals that AI is purely a mechanism for cost reduction.
Right. So you need human-centric language,
Words like
support, clarity, relief, and reducing friction. The sources suggest letting the skeptics and the ambassadors help shape the internal vocabulary. When employees hear their own language reflected in the policy, buy-in and trust go up dramatically.
We've traced the journey from profound human fears all the way through to operational structure. We have to conclude with the definition of success. And the sources fundamentally challenge the assumption that success means high-usage metrics or fast adoption.
Because those metrics are easy to measure, but they often signal that pressure, not health, is the driver. Real success has to be defined by psychological and operational health.
So cultural success means that skeptics remain respected members of the organization.
Yes. And AI use is discussed calmly and factually, not defensively or with hype.
And psychological success means less fear, more clarity, and less internal urgency, not more excitement.
That's it.
So if we strip away all the noise and the hype, what is the single strongest signal of organizational success that our listeners should be listening for?
It's the sound of confident, discerning judgment. It's people saying, I know when I would use AI, and more importantly, I know when I wouldn't.
That shows clear boundaries.
Preserve judgment and a healthy relationship with the technology.
That is a profound destination. We've gone from identifying these deep-seated human fears, the status threat, the moral contamination anxiety, to operationalizing trust through these specific human-centered roles like ambassadors, curators, and planners.
All built on a slow, patient timeline designed to respect attention and dignity.
And the final, deepest insight of all this work seems to be that what you're truly implementing is permission.
That's it. Permission to experiment without fear of punishment. Permission to opt out without being marginalized. Permission to ask naive questions without sounding behind.
And most critically, permission to use tools without surrendering your professional authorship or accountability.
Yes.
This leads us to the ultimate provocative thought for you, the listener, to carry forward. The true long-term risk of AI adoption isn't technical failure. It's not hallucinations or tool churn. It is something much more fundamental to the human condition inside an organization.
The real existential risk is that people learn to doubt their own judgment. If AI becomes the default, the authoritative voice, if we constantly defer to it or defensively guard against it, we lose the human muscle for critical thought and for accountability.
But the opportunity.
The profound opportunity that AI presents is that it forces an organization to finally articulate with absolute clarity what human judgment is for. It demands that you define the unique, irreplaceable value of your staff.
That is a powerful idea to end on. Are you protecting judgment, or are you merely chasing speed? We hope this deep dive helps you consider the roles you play in your own organization, as an ambassador, a curator, or a planner, and how you can ensure that trust and human deliberation are the cornerstone of your approach. Thank you for diving deep with us.